Hello, folks. Welcome to welcome. Wow, nice to screw up on the third word. Welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me, Cornel West. Sorry, I wasn't live yesterday, or would have covered it then. But Cornel West is running for president. He has announced quite a shock. I didn't see that coming. Pretty crazy. We'll be discussing that. Please, in the comments section, let me know where you stand, whether you like what he's saying, whether you don't, whether you want to see him run, whether you didn't want to see him run. Let me know in the comments section. We'll be getting into that. I'll be playing clips from Cornel West, showing you what he stands for to some extent. I also have another clip of RFK Jr. I'm going to play, but we're going to get into kind of the deeper aspects of this. Why is it so pivotal, so important that you even see these ideas being put forth in the U.S. presidential race that lasts roughly 15 and a half years? I mean, on average. Why is that? Why is it important? Why is it different? What's it say about our system? All of those things, we're going to be getting into that. But I have other stories as well. I'll be talking about whether a soft coup may be going about in Colombia. Talk about millions of people getting kicked off healthcare across the U.S. and not for the reason you think. You may think, oh yeah, I already heard that story. They're getting kicked off because we're ending the pandemic protections, and wait to hear why they're actually getting kicked off of healthcare in this country. I have that. I have stuff on Ukraine. All of that's coming up. So please help support the show. Hit thumbs up, hit like, hit share if you are subscribed, and I hope you are. Then hit the bell icon. And if you're watching at leecamp.net, that means you can get these live streams anytime you want. They don't disappear. You don't have to watch them just when they're live. You can watch them anytime if you're a member at leecamp.net. You also get a copy of my new ebook, Dangerous Ideas, that has just come out. But all right, let's get into it. Let's go. So Cornel West, I'm going to go ahead and play his entire, a little over 2-minute, the trailer for his presidency, his announcement speech. If you've already heard it, I'm sure you won't mind hearing some of it again. And we'll, and maybe I'll interrupt, as I tend to do, and talk about what he's saying.
In these bleak times, I have decided to run for truth and justice, which takes the form of running for president of the United States as a candidate for the People's Party. I enter in the quest for truth. I enter in the quest for justice. And the presidency is just one vehicle to pursue that truth and justice, what I've been trying to do all of my life.
I believe he can use it as a vehicle for truth and justice, but in general, the presidency is not a vehicle for truth and justice. I believe that I'm not disagreeing with him. I believe that he could use it for truth and justice, but in general, has the presidency ever been used for truth and justice, or really just used to continue the American empire and actually suppress and censor truth and justice in general? So maybe he could turn that around, though.
I come from a tradition where I care about you. I care about the quality of your life. I care about whether you have access to a job with a living wage, decent housing, women having control over their bodies, health care for all, de-escalating the destruction of the planet, the destruction of American democracy. Democracy creates disruption. It creates an eruption. It creates an interruption. Wide from below, the energies of everyday people is manifest. And I know there are precious people in your life who you care for. That's why it's important for you to be involved, important for you to participate. We're not talking about hating anybody. We're talking about loving. We're talking about affirming. We're talking about empowering those who have been pushed to the margins, because neither political party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, about Ukraine, about the Pentagon, about big tech. Neo-fascists like Brother Trump or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden.
Wow.
Well,
I'm so happy to make a world shaking decision. You know what I mean?
Well, I know gangsters when I see them. And gangster's not a subjective expression, it's an objective condition. Do we have what it takes? We shall see. But some of us are going to go down fighting, go down swinging with style and a smile, accenting the best in you and trying to tease out the best in me. Let's do it together.
So there you have it. Cornel West running for president. Someone asked if he's running as an independent. He's running on the People's Party, which is a third party. So, in that way, independent is outside of the two-party system, which I think a lot of the debate, I mean, yes, there's other nuances to the debate of, so I know many of you have really liked what RFK Jr. Has been saying, much of the stuff he's been saying. And I know many of you like a lot of what Cornel West has been saying. And so some of that discussion will probably be, if you like what both of them are saying, is it a Democratic Party that you want to be involved in, or is it a third party that you want to be involved in? I think that's an important conversation to have. I also think that these people, as should have been discussed with Bernie Sanders previous to his endorsement, was I think an important conversation is if you don't get the nomination, or if you don't win the presidency, are you going to endorse the Democrat for president? Meaning, are you going to be a sheepdog? Are you going to funnel all of that progressive energy, all of that leftist energy, and say, here is the corporate shit stain that you should vote for? As you know, which was one of the most upsetting things about Bernie Sanders, is that when after the primaries were rigged and he was knocked out of the running by all of that rigging, he then said, here, allow me to introduce all of my energy, all of that power and everything to Hillary Clinton. And he actually did tons of campaigning for Hillary Clinton. So I think that's an important question to have. In terms of my own views, there's a lot that Cornel West has said that I agree with. I'd say most of it. He does have a rhetorical trick, which from a kind of cynical angle, I enjoy watching, where he calls everyone brother, and it really lets them put their guards down. In this clip, he legitimately said, brother Trump, whether they're neo-fascists like brother Trump. He calls him brother Trump while saying he's a neo-fascist. No one can get away with insulting people as well as Cornel West does. He is brilliant at being like, whether you are, Satan's asshole like brother Trump, or Satan's dick hole like brother Biden. It's amazing how he does that. And you'll see him go on these TV shows, many of whom I consider to be disgusting right-wing sociopaths. I believe he's been on with Tucker Carlson. He used to go on a lot with Bill O'Reilly, I believe. And he had that rhetorical trick of being like, brother Bill. And it's like, dude, that guy's not your brother. I think if it was up to him, some of them might have you killed or imprisoned. But anyway, it's an interesting rhetorical trick. But that actually is, if you're running for president, if the guy stands for really important things, then that rhetorical trick where he's calling people I consider a sociopath brother, it's actually useful, because it gets a lot of people to let their guard down and actually think about what it is you stand for, what it is you're fighting for. I want to show some other clips as to why Cornel West is important. Let's see. I thought I had them ready, but close. All right. So this is him speaking at or on the DNC platform committee. You might remember that when they rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders, one of the only things that Bernie Sanders got out of that whole mess was that at the end of the day, they were like, well, you could help us decide our platform. And there were some Bernie Sanders supporters who were like, we did it. We're deciding the DNC platform. And the DNC platform is completely meaningless. Not only did they end up knocking out the most important stuff, but even the stuff that got in there, they just ignore it. So the DNC platform doesn't matter at all. And they were like, we'll let Bernie Sanders people decide the platform. However, I want to play what Cornel West said on those platforms, a bit of it, because it's important that he was willing to say these things in front of the many of the most powerful people in the Democratic Party. He was not kowtowing to them. He was not trying to curry favor to these people. And that's why I think a lot of what he stands for is very different from those who are willing to, bow down at the end of the day to the DNC.
Dr. West.
No, I just think it's very important that we don't sanitize and sterilize what Brother Bernie Sanders talks about when he talks about health care as a right, as opposed to a privilege. See, voting rights was a privilege for a long time. You had white brothers with property and white brothers without property. Women didn't have the right to vote. Black folk didn't get it until 65. So this language is so abstract that when Bernie Sanders says it's a right, he wants to specify the ways in which voting rights is universal. The right to join your own church, mosque, synagogue, temple, universal. The right to express yourself critically, universal. Right now, given the magnificent breakthrough of the Affordable Care Act, it's not a right. It's still a privilege of 29 million fellow citizens do not have access to it. That's what women were told in 1918. Voting rights is a right, but you don't have it. Sorry about that. But it's coming. It's coming. It's going to come because we organize and fight for it. We thank Bernie Sanders for working so hard and doing so and so. That's not what he's ultimately after. He's after a universal right in the way that voting rights are a right. It's not market-based. And we're not there yet. And we just voted against it.
And he ultimately, when he was on the platform committee, I don't know whether it was that year he was speaking there or another time, he ultimately voted against sending the platform to the next level to get it approved because they refused to say anything about Israel. They refused to call Israel an occupation. So I want to play another clip about that. And, he was willing to stand up in the face of, of all these people that were just bowing down. Oh, well, okay, we can't call Israel an occupation right now. And hilariously, where I found the clip is actually titled, Cornel West goes on anti-Israel rant. And if you actually watch the video that I'm about to show you, it's not an anti-Israel rant. It's actually saying, hey, why don't we have peace and security for everybody? Anyway, you'll see this. They love to act like the people who say, defend Israel at all costs. They love to act like you can't possibly be against, the killing and oppression of innocent civilians and be pro-Israel. If you are on a side of any team, if your team is the one saying that the only way to be just is to kill and malign and oppress innocent people, then you're not on the right team. Anyway.
I think both of us can agree that a precious Palestinian baby in the West Bank has exactly the same value as a precious Jewish baby in Tel Aviv. And therefore, when we talk about evenness at the moral and spiritual level, you come out of the rich Judaic tradition, I come out of a rich Christian tradition. We overlap in that regard. The real question is going to be commitment to security for precious Jewish brothers and sisters in Israel can never be predicated on an occupation of precious Palestinians. If we're concerned about security, it seems to me we're going to have to talk seriously about occupation. I don't know whether you
would allow the use of that word. New York Times said we got to put it in inverted commas. You know what I mean? No, occupation is real, it's concrete. But at the same time, how do we acknowledge Jewish people, 2,000 years, hated, haunted, vicious contempt, pogroms, show off, and so forth? Preoccupation with security, understandable. Palestinians, made in the image of God like anybody else, wrestling with occupation for 50 some years, demeaned, devalued, dominated, exploited. For too long, the Democratic Party has been beholden to AIPAC, that didn't take seriously the humanity of Palestinian brothers and sisters. We're at a turning point now. And of course, it's going to be a slow one in Democratic Party, but some of us will be working outside Democratic Party to make it quicker. That's why I support the BDS, not because I think it's anti-Semitic. We've got to fight anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish hatred. It goes hand in hand with every Christian civilization, and many Islamic civilization is wrong, it's unjust, but that cannot be the excuse of in any way downplaying the unbelievable misery that we see in Gaza, in West Bank, and other places. So my first question would be, would you argue for the use of the word occupation in the platform? And two, how would you respond to those who say for so long the United States has been so biased toward Israeli security and not accented the humanity of Palestinians, that to talk about even-handedness is always a version of anti-Semitism as opposed to a struggle for justice?
So there you go. Some incredibly important points made by Dr. Cornel West. Like I said, I find myself agreeing with him far more often than not. And I think that something that hasn't been talked about both in his candidacy and in the candidacy of RFK Jr. Now, just to add a quick caveat, as I've said with RFK, I have been highlighting the things RFK is doing that are grabbing third rails politically. Now, of course, as you see from this video, Cornel West also grabbing those third rails politically, which is exactly what I want to see. It is someone who is pushing the Overton window wider, breaking it apart. That's what I want to see in so many ways. But something I wanted to that I haven't seen highlighted really is the only reason you have at least two and maybe three, if you count Marianne Williamson on some of these things, candidates that are saying these things, that are fully anti-war, that are calling out the truth about Ukraine, that are speaking out against Israeli occupation. RFK is not good on that, but that are speaking out against corporate control of our government, all of these things. And, I could keep going down the list. The only reason you see this many candidates, this much talk of it, is because so many activists have worked tirelessly and many of them have been persecuted in order to broaden the ideals that are allowable, that are commonplace, that are appreciated and talked about. That there's been so long we have had in this country gatekeepers to our media and to these thoughts, and those gates were busted open. We're bust open. Not BUSSED. That'd be weird. We're broken apart during the internet age. By WikiLeaks and so many other online platforms. And now our government, our corporatocracy, has been working overtime. I mean, they never see their kids anymore because they've been working so hard trying to put those gates back in place, trying to make sure that people like Cornel West and RFK and so many others cannot speak out. To keep going down the list, Jill Stein, Bernie Sanders, before he became the Hillary cheerleading squad, have worked so hard to make sure these people cannot be heard again, to shut down their ability to be heard. Now, I am not one of those people, but I am one of the people that has, meaning I am not one of those politicians, but I am one of the people that has been highlighting their standpoint, their talking points, their ideas, and trying to broaden that Overton window, the allowable space for ideas, what is considered normal and what is considered radical. Now, of course, I have a positive view of radical. Many of you do as well, probably. But the goal is to get the things that seem radical, like my book is called Dangerous Ideas, the things that get radical, to push them into the mainstream so that they are front and center and they're no longer so radical. What Cornel West was saying there about talking about Israel as an occupation used to be far more radical, because you would never see it in your mainstream media. You would never see it even outside of your mainstream media, because those who actually spoke about it would be crushed. And that is still attempted. I'm not saying it's not, but BDS is rather mainstream. Calling it an occupation is rather mainstream. Going after big pharma is rather mainstream. Going after big oil and big banks, even to some degree, although it's still more radical than most things. Going after big ag is becoming more and more mainstream. And who do we have to thank for that? Fucking activists. All right. The protesters, the people getting arrested, putting up signs and called terrorists because they're fighting against Cop City in Atlanta or fighting against police brutality. But many of these things, we've seen them enter the mainstream, and that is huge. That is what we've been fighting for. And so, I don't know, to sum up this rant, there's a lot that we've achieved, and I think it's put us in this place now where you can see people like Cornel West, people like RFK Jr. Being candidates for president, and people aren't willing to just let them be tarred and feathered. Oh my God, he said Israel, he used the word apartheid. Oh my God, well, his candidacy is over. No, it's not. It's not. And to me, that's really important. And I'm going to keep following this. I'm going to follow and bring to you what Cornel West is saying. I'm going to follow and bring to you what RFK Jr. is saying. And that doesn't mean I'm going to agree on every word that either of them states. But I'm going to keep bringing you that stuff. And I hope that that's part of why you watch what I do. But I also want to hear what you think. Is it even if, as he says in his campaign ad, his first campaign ad there, we may go down, but we're going to go down swinging. And, some people say, well, don't admit you're going to go down. You should tell everyone you're going to win. It's a different tactic. It depends on which tactic you feel is the right one. But I want to hear from you as to whether, even if third parties, people talk about ballot access, people talk about, the mainstream media won't give him any coverage. People talk about that kind of stuff. Well, but does that mean it's useless? Does that mean it's meaningless? Does that mean there's nothing about the noble fight? There's nothing about pushing those ideas in a way that has not been allowed before? To me, there's something beautiful and noble about it. And, I also understand the other argument, which is if Cornel West were to run in the Democratic primary, as RFK Jr. and others are doing, they're running in a completely rigged system in which DNC lawyers literally went into court and told the judge, we have no legal obligation to have a fair primary. They said to the judge, they stopped short of saying, and we don't plan to, but their point was, we can and will rig it if we feel like it, because there is nothing in our laws that says the DNC must have a fair primary. And to me, that is a big, giant flag of you are not going to get a legit run inside the DNC. Now, there's certainly an argument to be made that you don't get much of a legit run as a third party either. But all of these things are listed under the category of we don't have an actual democracy, we don't have an actual republic, and that's why I and some others, while I enjoy talking about these ideas and everything, I also like to push the point that you should not spend all of your effort and all of your anger and all of your ire and all of your fury directed at the presidency and talk of the presidency for 2 straight years. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to show you some Cornel West clips and some RFK Jr. clips, but it means you can't act like that is everything to create change. In fact, most change in this country, in this world, comes outside of efforts to put someone in the Oval Office. However, that being said, soon I will also be announcing that I have chosen to be the campaign manager for it's a grayish brown rock that I found in my front yard, and I think he's got a good chance. I really, he's gonna run third party, and I think he's got a good shot. Anyway, just I know some of you might be doubtful that such an inanimate object could win the presidency. However, just hold back until you hear his platform, okay? Because I think it's gonna blow a lot of you away. Okay, I want to show you. Oh, and by the way, this is the latest poll. I forgot I even had this. So this is obviously a poll before Cornel West entered the race, although CNN's not going to poll him anyway. Like, they're not going to poll third parties anyway, so it wouldn't have really mattered. But this is a CNN poll, so this is already likely manipulated. I did a lot of coverage back in 2016 and maybe some in 2020 on how CNN would poll presidential candidates. But in order to make it look like Bernie Sanders was not doing well, if you actually went deep into the data as to who they polled, it was legitimately people with a landline between ages like 30 and 60 or something. So it was older. Now, I know 30 is not old, but compared to a 21-year-old, it was older people in the demographic with a landline phone. And so that's how they tilted these polls, and they may be doing it in this one. I haven't looked. I don't even know if they allow looking into the data of how they did this poll. However, yes, Biden has a lead, but here's the key takeaway of this. Just a third of Americans say that Biden winning in 2024 would be a step forward or a triumph for the country. A third say that Biden winning would be a good thing for the country. Let's see. Survey finds a decline in favorability from 42% to 35% now. That's just in the past few months. God, they're really... I think they're intentionally hiding this within like dense paragraphs. Within the party, 60% of Democratic voters, so these are people who are already securely Democrats, say they would back Biden. Only 60%, which for a sitting president is actually pretty low. And then 20%, RFK Jr. is already at 20%, despite the fact he's been running for a few weeks. And he's barely done any mainstream media interviews because largely they won't have him. He did do a few, but most of them don't want to speak to him. And then 8% for Marianne Williamson. So that means 28% of Democrats. So these are people who already say, yeah, I am a Democrat, which probably very few of you watching right now would say that. You'd probably say you're independent or you're third party or however you put it. But these are people who say, yeah, I'm a Democrat. And yet 20% of them are already saying they vote for RFK, and 80% for Marianne Williamson, and only 60% for Biden. Now, if you included independents, because in many states, you can vote in the Democratic primary without being a long-held Democratic card-carrying member. So once you add in independents, who knows what those numbers would be. But anyway, that's just like... and Cornel West, of course, is not in those yet because he just announced 2 days ago, or really yesterday was when most people found out. But okay, I wanted to bring you another clip of RFK Jr. and show you yet another place that really it's become like mainstream to have these opinions that RFK Jr. is about to show. And To me, that is what's so important. It's not whether he's going to get elected or not. People understand these things now.
Philosopher said that the U.S. strategy should be to suck Russia into a series of wars in little countries where we can then exhaust them. Lloyd Austin, who is the President Biden's defense secretary, in April 2022 said, our purpose for being in the Ukraine is to degrade the Russian army, to exhaust it and degrade its capacity to fight anywhere in the world. Well, that is the opposite of a humanitarian mission. That is a war of attrition, and that's what it's turned out to be. We have now turned Ukraine into an abattoir that has devoured 350,000 young Ukrainians. They are lying about how many people have died. They're concealing it from us. They're concealing it from the Pentagon's concealing it from the American people. The Ukraine is concealing it from them people, but 350,000 people. Russians are killing Ukrainians at a rate at a ratio of 7 to 1. And we have turned that poor little nation into, just a killing field for these idealistic young kids. And in order to advance a geopolitical agenda that, has nothing to do with the Ukraine.
Okay, so now, the things that I, for one thing, speaking to Jordan Peterson. Now, I know Cornel West would probably also speak to Jordan Peterson and be like, Brother Peterson, even though that guy's a right-wing maniac. But anyway, those ideas that RFK Jr. was just putting forward are very important ones about what we're doing to Ukraine. And there are things I disagree with, because he said, what did he say? Idealistic young men are being killed in Ukraine. Some of them maybe, but some of them are also Nazis. It's not just idealistic young men. But also the other problems with RFK is, weirdly, despite saying that CIA killed at least his uncle, and I believe he's hinted that the government was involved in his father's killing as well, or maybe said as much. I don't follow every quote, but despite saying that, he seems to still be somewhat a fan of the CIA. He's talked about how it's 22,000 mostly hardworking, very brave young men and women, and my niece is one of them, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, dude, CIA is the same shit that killed your uncle. Okay. It hasn't, I don't know what kind of Stockholm syndrome you have to act like the CIA is mostly brave, wonderful young men and women when they've murdered your uncle. But anyway, and essentially your father. But sorry, I got into the caveats. Sometimes you get stuck waist deep in the caveats. You know what? And you're just like, shit, there's caveats everywhere, and you're swatting at them, like gnats. But now that I'm done with the caveats, fucking yeah, the U.S. does not have a humanistic view of what we're doing in Ukraine. We don't have a caring, we don't have an empathetic, we don't have, it's a sociopathic plan of destroying Ukraine, fighting Russia to the last Ukrainian, letting Ukrainians die to the tune of hundreds of thousands, destroying their society, destroying their lives. Even for those who don't die, they have their lives uprooted and ruined, and and they that's what the U.S. is fine with. Not just fine with, but excited about, perhaps. It's horrific. But these type of ideas, right, they're not really that secretive anymore. They're not really radical to say these things. And again, that is those of us who, and I'm including all of you watching now, unless you're sitting there going, I disagree with everything you're saying. All the others, those of us who have been speaking about this, talking about this, sharing these videos, we are the ones that created the space for those type of conversations and those things to be said and to be appreciated and to be shared. And so to me, there's a lot of excitement around these ideas. And that's what should be taken out of this as the fight continues, as we are in these dire times. Such dire times that, and I'm sure many of you are in this right now, such dire times that New York City is like the skies are on fire. Much of the U.S. is under air advisory warnings. I am here in Baltimore because these are from forest fire smoke coming down from Canada. Here's one tweet of the orange sky in New York City. And I lived in New York City for 12 years. Never saw a sky like that. And this person tweeted out, my Colombian wife says the sky over NYC right now looks like the filter they put on U.S. TV shows and movies when they depict Latin America, Africa, or the Middle East. And sorry to be laughing, but I covered that just the other day on, it was from a Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting article, literally showing how New York Times, Washington Post, and others put a different colored filter on images from Latin America or from other countries that the U.S. is opposed to in order to dim them, darken them, make them look somehow miserable. Because the problem is, if you're saying, oh, everyone should hate Venezuela, and then you show a photo of Venezuela and it looks like a fucking paradise, then that's not good for your propaganda. So instead, they put this like, burnt out Matrix sky look over the images. But yeah, so that's what apparently New York City looks like right now. And this shows the ability of humans to habituate to habituation is a bitch, to habituate to the most dire times. I mean, we are in the midst of an epic climate crisis. And that should be honestly like 80% of what we're talking about. 80% of what we're fighting for is change on that level, is to do anything and everything to deal with that, to both remedy it and to help those affected most. Instead, we're like, the orange sky is pretty. And if I wear a mask outside, I don't even taste the burning. That's what we're in the middle of. Sorry, I'm realizing there's something on my lens. But anyway, we get used to this. We act like it's normal. We act like it's okay. This is not okay. The world is burning, and people are acting like, that's funny. It's lovely sunsets. Hey, did you notice the world is burning? Yeah, but how about the sunsets? They're gorgeous. It's sunsets all day long. Wonderful. Wonderful. So I just wanted to bring you that. The latest update in the climate crisis, New York is orange. Okay. Wonderful. And I believe it wasn't that long ago that I brought you a story on how San Francisco was orange a few months ago, meaning the skies were dim, smoke-filled orange skies. And we're going, everything's fine, folks. Everything's fine. Just we've got that person standing out front going, nothing to see here. Ignore that the skies have been scorched. Just go about your day. It's all fine. Just don't look up. I think there was a movie titled that, wasn't there? Just don't look up. That's perfectly what Adam McKay was talking about. New York, you're fine. Just wear a gas mask and don't look up. Okay. And you will not even notice that we're killing this planet. By the way, I take a little credit for Don't Look Up, the movie, which is like the second watch movie in Netflix history. I take a little bit of credit, just a little, because part of that movie is about the corruption of Washington. And remember, if you saw it, that they were going to blow up the asteroid, but then they realized that they can get a lot of minerals from the asteroid, and so they want to let it hit the Earth so that they can mine the minerals. And so they basically don't blow it up correctly, or don't blow it up because they're bought out. The government is bought out by big tech and other corporations. And when I was talking to Adam McKay in the interview on Redacted Tonight, I said, because he was talking about corrupted government, bought out, nothing gets done that doesn't align with corporate America. That was the discussion. And I go, Adam, you gotta do a movie to bring this to everyone's attention. You just get Jennifer Lawrence or someone attached to do it, and then everybody cares. Where are you? Get on that. And he laughed and said, okay, yeah, I'll get on that. And then he did. So I don't know. I haven't spoken to him. He didn't give me a high five, virtual or otherwise. So, I don't think I'm getting any royalties in the mail anytime soon, but I take full credit. He legit went with Jennifer Lawrence. So I think he should send me $1 million is the end of that sentence. Okay, moving on. So a new study shows that U.S. media coverage on Ukraine is dominated, and they really dug into the numbers, they dug into the media, is dominated by and funded by, just forgot. I'm going to, the rest of this is at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp for the rest of this. Free to watch, free to be over there, no cost. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. I'll give you the link in case you're lazy, which I understand. We're all a little lazy, but here you go. Join me over there at rumble.com/Lee Camp because YouTube has fucked me. And so I got to do my stuff over there. So join me over there. Or if you're watching at leecamp.net, my locals page, it'll continue as is for you over there. And obviously, if you're over there, there's a lot of perks. Like you get to send me messages. We get to chat about things. I address your comments. You also get my free new ebook, Dangerous Ideas. You get the live streams whenever you want. All of those perks for 38 cents an episode if you join up at leecamp.net. So I hope you will do that and keep this show going. All right.